That's part one. Part two goes like this. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Now you have to make a choice. Would you like to be the foundation, or would you like to be the beautiful building? You have to make a choice, but you're lucky. You can change your mind if you'd like. Foundation people, begin with me, please. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Keep going. Hallelujah. That's what he did. And he wove us all together. With miracles. That's what he did. There are at least 4 communities here within which Moshe did his weaving. His family, Jean and Laura Lerner and Liz Salem, Jean's spouse, and Ruth Lerner, Jean and Liz's daughter, and Lori Lyons, Leah's daughter, who lives in North Carolina, and Alan, her son. And then there's his family from Israel, Neria Badmor Shahor, and Yael Shahor, Neria's daughter, and Hadass Zariz Ron, Moshe's niece from Israel also. They're his sister's children. And then there is the Chavarah and the library minion. Can you hear me? It's better? Better. Aha. There's the library minion and the Chavarah. We all feel that we're also Moshe's family. We loved him as a friend and a teacher. And then there's the CWW community, the Community Without Walls, a 4th family. And then there are all the rest of you who are here from other parts of his life to mourn the passing of Moshe Badmor and to celebrate his life. There's a phrase at the end of the memorial prayer, which we'll recite towards the end of this service. And the phrase says, Utzror b'tzror hachayim et nishmato. And the word soror means something like to weave together or to knot. And so, translating that phrase quite literally, may his soul be woven into the fabric, the tapestry of life. As if all of our lives are bright, shining, beautifully colored threads that we weave during our lives, and that the people we know weave for us, and when we die, those of us who remember him continue the weaving into that very large tapestry. So that's what we're here to do today, is to weave, just like he did. He was a master weaver. So to commemorate him, there are people who are going to give words of tribute. People from, there's somebody here from CWW, Bob Levine? Yes, exactly. Okay. And Ruth Goldston from the Library Minyan. And Jean and Laura Lerner and Liz Salem. I'd like to begin the weaving with a poem. The poem is by the Hebrew poet Zelda. It's called L'chol ish yesh shem. To every person is a name. Every person has a name given by God and given by his father and mother. Every person has a name given by his stature and his way of smiling, and given by his clothes. Every person has a name given by the mountains and given by his walls. Every person has a name given by the planets and given by his neighbors. Every person has a name given by his sins and given by his yearning. Every person has a name given by his enemies and given by his love. Every person has a name given by his festivals and given by his work. Every person has a name given by the seasons and given by his blindness. Every person has a name given by the sea and given by his death. So let us weave Moshe's name. Ruth?
In 1981, as legend would have it, Moshe and his friend Ora Starr were on a bus coming back from a peace demonstration in Washington, D.C. They were talking about a new idea they'd heard about, an independent Jewish fellowship group called a Havurah, from the Hebrew word for friend. They were feeling a need for Jewish community, but wanted something more personal and intimate than what they expected a synagogue would provide. They decided to see if they could start a Havurah themselves. So Moshe and Ora told their friends, who told other friends, who told other friends, and so it was that a group of people who knew each other well, slightly or not at all, gathered in Ora's living room one Friday night to talk about forming a small, self-led community that would do Jewish together on a regular basis. At our very first gathering, Moshe announced that we must sing together, and we did, at many meetings thereafter, using song sheets he provided and under his direction. Of course, part of the experience of singing under Moshe's direction was to have him stop us, tell us what we were doing wrong, explain with occasional exasperation how to do it right, and start again. But he did insist that anyone could sing, and encouraged everyone, even those who thought of themselves as tone deaf, to participate. Singing together, he knew very well, is one of the ways we grow to feel connected to one another. And our singing as a group helped us form the close and intimate bonds that have kept us together for almost 35 years. Not long after our group began meeting, Moshe invited us to a concert that he was conducting. The first part included some medieval choral works and other pieces from what I'd call the standard repertoire. In the second part, however, Moshe turned to face the audience and told us that we would be performing in the next piece. I don't recall now if it was a story he told or some music he had composed, but at different times he signaled the audience to make particular sounds, kind of like the wind whooshing through the trees. And just so you get the feel of it, I'd like to try that right now. So whatever you think the wind sounds like, you can make that noise, and I'm just going to start over here, and as I sort of put my hand around, you make your noise and we'll have a sense of the wind wafting through the room. Okay? I was stunned. Suddenly, a concert wasn't just a performer on stage with an audience listening and applauding. It was a unique and participatory experience involving everyone in the room creating music together. Moshe composed many wonderful pieces of music in the course of his long life, but in many ways I feel this was his signature achievement, breaking down the barriers between performer and audience, facilitating a mutual creative endeavor, and in the process, forming a community. Every Hanukkah, the holiday that is beginning tonight, the Chavurah would gather to light candles and sing, and especially to tell the story of Hanukkah under Moshe's direction. Of course, this was a time when there were no wrongs. He never stopped us. It was our creation and different every time. Moshe would bring his shruti box, a small, very simple instrument that originates in India and produces a droning sound, kind of like an accordion. And he would play it in the background while he intoned the tale of the Maccabean revolt and directed us to make sounds at particular moments, kind of like what we just did. We never remembered all the names of the 5 sons of Mattathias, but he taught us that after he said the name of the evil king Antiochus, we should say, Kishentochus, or roughly speaking, kiss my... We will tell the story again every year, but without Moshe, of course, it will never be the same. At that first meeting in Ora's living room, Moshe famously said that he wasn't looking for friends. He already had plenty of those. Of course, we've been teasing him about this over the last 35 years because who knew then that our Chavurah would become such an important part of all our lives? At our last meeting a few weeks ago, held in a large room at the Elms so Moshe could attend, the topic was moments of personal revelation. I had thought that he would be asleep after just a few minutes because he had seemed so tired and weak, but he stayed awake and attentive throughout the entire hour and a half as 20 people shared their poignant and sometimes humorous memories. Moshe's revelation, he said, came when he was struggling to compose the music for his doctoral dissertation. He was trying to incorporate all of what he had learned in his life and in graduate school, all the rules and music theory and history, as well as the imperative to be original and modern and creative and to live up to his and others' expectations. And not surprisingly, he felt completely stuck, unable to write a note. But then, he said, came the moment when he realized he was free, that he could allow himself to do whatever he felt, and that he didn't have to be burdened by training and history and theory and expectations. At that moment, Moshe was able to let his ideas flow, and of course he completed the dissertation and so much more beautiful music in the many years that followed. On the same day that he spoke about this revelation to the Chavurah, Moshe came to the decision to enter hospice, another moment where he realized he was free to live his life as he chose. He had been so frustrated with the terrible food, the routines, the physical therapy, the constant interruptions, the lack of control over his own life, even as he was in pain and tired and weak and exhausted from fighting pneumonia and his body's decline. In hospice care, of course, he would forego so-called heroic measures to keep him alive, but he would be comfortable and well cared for. He would be at home with family and friends, so important to him, and he could eat and sleep as he chose. He would be free. In 1981, when Moshe said he already had plenty of friends, he was of course correct. He had so many friends, kibbutzniks and childhood buddies in Israel, students in Europe, colleagues and fellow musicians everywhere in the world, and he continued to make friends and create community wherever he went. In recent weeks, I spent time with him both at the hospital and at the Elms, and many, many friends came to visit, including, I'm sure, many of you who are here today. I found myself thinking, each one of us believes that we are Moshe's most special and important friend. Part of it was his warm and welcoming smile, which he bestowed so generously upon us, even when he felt tired and weak. And part of it was the intimacy he was able to create in his relationship with every person. I know I felt close to him and much loved, and I believe he felt the love I have for him, especially in recent months when his life had been so difficult. I know many people who are here today would say the same thing. Moshe loved me. I was so special and important to him, and I loved him too. While he was in Princeton Hospital a few weeks ago, a volunteer came into the room to visit with him. When she realized he already had a visitor, that was me, she said that she would just stay for a minute or two. In that time, she managed to tell Moshe, who listened courteously and as attentively as he could, the entire story of how hard it had been to lose her husband of many years, and her joy in finding a new special someone to be her partner in life. At the end, she asked Moshe what was his secret to living such a long life. Moshe's voice was weak, but he was very clear and certain as he told her, the secret is to always be in love. Moshe was in love with Katya, and then he was in love with Leah, but his gift was to make all of us feel like he was in love with us too. Zichrono livracha, may Moshe's memory always be a blessing to everyone he loved, and may we derive strength and comfort from our memories and our love for him.
From Community Without Walls, Balmain.
I've been asked to speak about CWW's love affair with Moshe, which you've already heard a lot about. Can you hear me better now?
No.
Oh, how about this? Good. For those of you who don't know about CWW, it's a 500+ Princeton area organization of older people called Community Without Walls. It's dedicated to the idea of spending your declining years by living in a place, which means either in your own home or in one of your chosen. It's organized in a number of houses, each with a limited number of members so that members can get to know one another better. This is particularly appropriate because what I want to talk about in a more general way is Moshe's gift to everyone he knew and to every organization to which he was active. For CWW3, the house to which he and I belong, it consisted of his serving on a whole series of committees, including membership, planning, programming. We gave a number of outstanding programs, and as a consequence, we got to know one another so much better. It's hard to believe that CWW would have done as well as it did without Moshe. He was even a member of our cooking group of men, and some women too, and where he inspired us on occasion, since he was a vegetarian, to actually make some pretty good vegetarian meals. Moshe was not an ordinary committee member. He was inventive, creative, enthusiastic, and inspired the rest of us to greater accomplishments, sometimes much to our amazement. And it was his ability to inspire you to these greater accomplishments that was so impressive. He was able to be better, to get you to be better, and to do better just by being there. I know, because one time when he was at my house for dinner, he read something that I had written. And after a little discussion, he inspired me to write and publish a complete book. So it was a book about my family, and especially for my grandchildren and those who will follow me. I'm sure that those of you in the music world and others who taught and worked with him had similar experiences. I can't end without remembering all the times we had together, working, talking, sailing. He was a sailor, like I am, cooking, and how much I loved Moshe through it all. And also, how I and everyone in this room miss him. Thank you.
Jean and Laura, Leah's daughters, and Liz, Jean's spouse, would like to speak in, I don't know what order you want to go in, so it's your choice.
When Moshe married my mother, I didn't know what a lovely addition to our family he would be. He was not only a loving husband to my mother, but unexpectedly a wonderful grandfather to my children, and in some ways, a father to myself. Our somewhat fractured and difficult family dynamic shifted after he became part of it. I know my mother's childhood of loss and deprivation, of growing up too soon in the care of friends, like Moshe's childhood as well, contributed to her need for love and security that was not fully realized until she met Moshe. With him, she could relax and feel taken care of. She could be someone's whole universe. He loved her the way she had always wanted to be loved. He also brought with him a playfulness and lightheartedness that, for all his own losses and suffering, kept him young and curious and joyful. There were always unusual and silly board games and games of balance and construction and puzzles of interlocking wooden pieces that took hours to put back together. And backgammon, of course, and word games and charades and cards. We spent hours playing the family card game, Liverpool Rummy. Coming to Grandma and Saba's house was a treat and always fun. It was a gathering spot all these years, a warm and welcoming place for us all. and we became a family that had a place to come to, where we could enjoy each other. And even after Leah died, we knew we still had a family home with Moshe at the heart of it. Over the years, I've had my own crises, and Moshe was a strong and steady force when my family and I have been in need. His grandfatherly ways extended beyond fun and games, and he was a brilliant example for my children and myself of how to be in the world. He always knew the right words to say. He knew what was important. He was immoral and could be counted on to do the right thing. I respected and admired him, and I loved him.
The last 7 or 8 weeks. Sorry. The last 7 weeks or so, I've been kind of sticking pretty close. Living here in Princeton pretty much. And the time that I spent with Moshe is so precious to me. And it was precious to him as well. He allowed me to be his main support, and that was a gift to me. And I can hardly use words to say. I just want to acknowledge how very much he meant to me, to all of us, and how precious he is to everyone I know.
An author whose work I admire wrote a book about prayer. And she said that all prayer boils down to one of 3 things: please or help, thanks or wow. And I thought, wow, what a great way to sum up. And that popped into my head as I was thinking about what to say about Moshe. Because I think it's safe to think that every single person in this room would have a wow to say about him. Something extraordinary, something that set him apart, something that we appreciate about him particularly. My wow was that he accepted me as a member of his family, even though my now wife and I were in an untraditional relationship. He never asked any questions, he just assumed and made us all family. So thanks. Thanks for giving him to us, to all of us. And for giving all of us to him, because I know that it was all very important to him. Once he decided that he was ready to leave, and he came home in hospice, he was so much happier. And the visits that he received were so important to him. He was happy. He was actually happy. And he occasionally would say to me, why is it taking so long? I'm ready. But the visits and the calls from family and friends made it a happy time for him. So for the please, I ask that please help us through this loss, help us recover, so that the pain is not so great, and we're left with just the love that he gives us.
On your song sheets, the second song. If you don't have one in front of you, there's one for every 1.8 Who is the man who desires life, who loves to behold goodness each day? Guard your tongue from evil and your lips from speaking slander. Turn from evil and do good. Seek peace and pursue it. Here are the bones of his life. He was born in Germany, in Hamburg, in 1924. When Moshe's mother was pregnant, she decided that she would have a musician son. And so she went to every concert in Hamburg for the 9 months of her pregnancy. It worked. Very early, even before he was 2 years old, he showed distinct interest in music. And when he was 5, he started his formal music training. Neria and Hadash shared with me a poem that they sing in their family. They have a melody for it, and I don't know the melody, but I'll read you the first verse of the poem. It's by the poet Fania Bergstein. My mother, my father, you planted melodies in me. Melodies, songs, forgotten. Now, kernels, seeds, carried in my heart are rising, growing. Now they spread branches in my blood, and roots twining in my veins. Your melodies, Father, your songs, Mother, in my beating pulse awaken and return. His father, who was CEO of a furniture factory, died when Moshe was 8. And 2 months later, in April of 1934, his mother took Moshe and his 2 sisters, Ruth and Aliza, to Palestine. And the very next year, his mother fell ill, and in 1936, she too died. Moshe was living in Jerusalem at the time. He joined the Haganah, what would become the Israeli Armed Forces, and he joined Shomer HaTzair, the youth movement. And at age 16, he dropped out of high school, and he enrolled in the Jerusalem Academy of Music. And then began several years of moving around Palestine. He spent time in Kibbutz Hulata, up in the north, where there used to be a very large lake, as a shepherd and a fisherman, and always teaching music and forming choirs and conducting orchestras. At the end of the War of Independence, he was appointed to be music coordinator for the entire kibbutz movement in Israel. And that lasted until he met his first wife, Katya Delikova, the beautiful dancer. And they fell in love. And when she returned to the United States, where she was a citizen, he followed soon after. And in 1950, he was accepted to the Juilliard School in New York City and reconnected with Katya, and soon they were married. And there's more to that story, which I don't know the full details of, but she was married at the time, somebody else. There followed years of teaching and conducting, including being conductor of the Haifa Symphony and the Haifa Chamber Chorus, and the Choral Society of the 92nd Street Y, and the Bronx Symphony, and teaching at, of all places, Hebrew Union College. And received further degrees from Columbia Teachers College in 1963, and in 1965 he was engaged by Trenton State College, which is now the College of New Jersey, to teach, where he stayed for 23 years. And during his tenure there, he and Katya taught yearly in Germany and later in Haifa. In 1988, Katya and many of us carry very cherished memories of her, became ill with cancer. Moshe cared for her until she died. I think it was 1992, 91. He was devastated. And he was comforted by Leah Lerner, a very fine pianist, who many of us also knew and loved. And they fell in love. And they were married, I think in 1994. Did I get that one? Yeah, 5. He said, I was very lucky with Leah because she brought me instant family, instant grandchildren, instant daughters. They became my daughters, not just stepdaughters. We had lovely years together. And while they were married, Moshe resumed conducting and proposing and giving workshops in this country and in Germany. And that brings us to the time when many of us came to know him well, came to love his music and his great wit, his charm, his excitement, his bushy eyebrows, his sometimes not so gentle scolding, the beautiful house that he and Leah had on, was it Abernathy? Yeah. Was it? Yeah. Okay. It was that beautiful house up there next to Little Brook School. And we remember the delight that Leah and Moshe had in each other. And then Leah fell ill, and Moshe cared for her with great tenderness until she died. And we felt that we knew him well, and we did. But I recently learned something about him that I didn't really know. And I believe it's a key to his inner life. And I want to share it with you. About a month ago or so, he told me that he had one more text that he wanted to set to music. One more composition that he had intended to write his entire life and never had been quite able to do it. It was a text that he had learned when he was 14 years old in school, and he had never forgotten it. And I'll read it to you. It's from Jeremiah, chapter 4, verse 19, and it continues. Oh, my suffering, how I writhe. Oh, the walls of my heart moans within me. I cannot be silent. My soul hears the blare of the shofar, alarms of war. Disaster overtakes disaster. For suddenly ravaged is the land, and ravaged my tent walls. Until when shall I see war's standards? Will I hear the blaring horns? For my people are stupid with me. They give me no heed. They are foolish children. Not intelligent are they. Wise in being evil, but in doing good, unknowing. On Wednesday, and that was less than 24 hours before he died, he recited that text to me in Hebrew from memory perfectly. He understood it well at age 14, and he carried it with him all his life. I didn't ask him on Wednesday, and I regret now that I didn't ask him. How, with this knowledge in his heart, with this sensing clearly the foolish violence that we all know lurks inside of humanity, how did he devote his great energies to teaching, to bringing music and understanding and community to so many people, weaving people together here and in many, many, many other places, and all the time holding this dark peace in his heart? Of course, he's not unique. All of us, and recently more than ever, are burdened with the senseless violence of the world that exists alongside great beauty and exaltation. There's this wonderful phrase in the Reformed prayer book that Chaim Stern wrote called Gates of Prayer. He did it, 40 years ago or so. And he says, there is evil enough to break the heart, good enough to exalt the soul. And how did Moshe hold these two together? I didn't ask him. But I think we know what he would say. And I'm going to say it in my own words. And I'm sure you and he will correct me if I don't get it accurate. He'll stop and he'll shake his hand and say, no, no, no. Try it again. Hanukkah begins in a few hours. A widespread commentary on lighting the candles is that the light that emanates from the candles is drawn from the Or Ganuz, the primal light of the first day of creation. When the sun and the moon and the stars were created on the fourth day, God took that primal light and put it away, stored away, reserved, as it is said, for the righteous, for the tzaddikim, in times to come. And what are the tzaddikim going to do with that light? I wonder. Moshe would say that the tzaddikim, they are the teachers who bring portions of that primal light to their students, to their community, to their friends. And by that primal light, we can see from one end of the world to the other. For he was a teacher. That's how he thought of himself, and that's how we thought of him. He was a weaver of light in the form of music. He blessed us with his weevil, and we were blessed to have him among us. Please stand. O God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure, to the soul of Moshe Badmor, who has gone to his eternal home. Master of mercy, we beseech you, remember all the worthy and righteous deeds that he performed in the land of the living. May his soul be woven into the very fabric of life itself. Adonai is his portion, and may he rest in peace. El Malei Rachamim Shachein Bameromim Hametzei Menocha Nechon Hatachad Kanafecha Shechina Bemalot Kedoshim Utechorim Ketzohar Harakeyam Azekirim Et Nishmat Moshe Ben Benyamin Udevorah שהלך לעולמו. בגן תהי מנוחתו. חנה בעל הרחמים, חסירהו בסתר כנפיך העולמים, אוסרון בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו. ונאמר Amen. Please be seated. This part, you're number 1. You are part 2. You are part 3.